Imagine you're a German soldier in 1940. You've been told the British are still using an old bolt-action rifle whose design goes back to the late 1800s. Easy targets, you think. But when the battle starts, the air explodes with rifle fire, fast, relentless, and accurate, like a wall of lead slamming into your position, and your officers shout. Machine guns, even though most of what you're facing are just British riflemen with Lee Enfields. Germany enters the war with modern weapons, America shows up with the M1 Garand semi-automatic rifle, and Britain shows up with a bolt-action design critics call a museum piece. Yet this wrong choice becomes one of the deadliest rifle systems of the war. By the 1930s, semi-automatic rifles were seen as the future, fewer movements, more bullets. And American soldiers with the M1 Garand could deliver far more aimed shots per minute than a typical bolt-action user. The German Kar 98K was a modern, rugged Mauser-type bolt-action, while the Garand offered self-loading fire, making Britain's short magazine Lee Enfield look like old technology marching into a modern war. To any armchair general comparing spec sheets in 1939, the verdict was simple. Germany had precision, America had user-friendly firepower, and Britain had a relic, which made the British choice look like a textbook mistake before a single shot was fired. What most critics didn't see was that Britain had tested semi-automatic designs and found they struggled with the brutal realities of mud, rain, dust, and rough handling across a global battlefield. A self-loading rifle that jams when dirty is not an upgrade. It's a liability that can get soldiers killed in seconds. Even more important was logistics. The entire British Empire supply system, from factories in the UK to depots in Africa and Asia, was built around the Lee Enfield, its .303 ammunition, its magazines, and its spare parts, so ripping that out on the eve of war risked chaos that Britain simply could not afford. In other words, Britain did not cling to the Lee Enfield because it was afraid of change, it did it because changing everything right before a world war could have been suicidal. Not all bolt-action rifles are equal, and this is where the Lee Enfield becomes dangerous. Its design features, a smooth action, rear-locking lugs, and cock-on closing system, let a trained soldier cycle the bolt extremely fast, often without losing the sight picture on the target. A short bolt lift and smooth throw meant less movement, less disruption, and more rounds on target in the same amount of time. Then there was the magazine, 10 rounds, double the capacity of most rival rifles, which usually carried 5. That extra capacity reduced reloads, increased sustained fire, and when combined with rapid bolt operation, turned the Lee Enfield into the fastest military bolt-action rifle of its day, capable of 20 to 30 aimed shots per minute in trained hands. British doctrine treated the average infantryman not as a casual shooter, but as a precision marksman with a high rate of fire. On the range, soldiers were expected to deliver at least 15 aimed rounds per minute at combat ranges, and with practice some could reach 20 or more in the famous Mad Minute drills. These weren't wild bursts, they were carefully placed shots drilled into muscle memory until the rifle and shooter moved as one. The Mad Minute became legendary. Starting with a full magazine and extra rounds, riflemen poured accurate fire into targets at 200 to 300 yards, proving the Lee Enfield could deliver machine gun-like volume without sacrificing accuracy. Under combat stress those numbers dropped, but even then British troops could sustain rates of fire that German doctrine often did not expect from ordinary riflemen. Now bring that training onto the battlefield. A German patrol advances through early morning mist, believing they are up against a small British screening force armed with slow bolt-action rifles. Suddenly, a rolling wave of shots rips through the fog, not a slow crack, 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 but dense, overlapping fire that feels like multiple automatics opening up at once. Reports from both world wars describe German troops mistaking concentrated Lee Enfield fire for machine guns, because the volume and consistency of hits did not match their expectations of what bolt-action rifles could do. A line of British riflemen, each capable of 12 to 20 aimed rounds per minute, could put out staggering amounts of fire, especially when multiplied across an entire company or battalion. British infantry sections were built around the Bren light machine gun as the primary source of automatic fire, with the riflemen organized to support it. The section was typically split into a gun group with the Bren and an assistant, and a rifle group armed with Lee Enfields, moving and firing in bounds to protect, feed, and exploit the Bren's firepower. Each rifleman usually carried extra Bren magazines, and training manuals stressed that everyone had to be expert with the section's light machine gun as well as their own rifle. In practice, this meant the Lee Enfield wasn't trying to replace the Bren. Instead, it acted as a force multiplier, filling the gaps, extending range, and adding a torrent of accurate fire wherever the Bren pointed the enemy's head down. The real test of a service rifle is not a clean shooting bench, it's the worst environments a war can offer. The Lee Enfield fought in the deserts of North Africa, where dust and extreme heat punished weapons, and in the steaming jungles of Burma and New Guinea, where humidity and mud tried to rot everything metal. It also went ashore with British and Commonwealth troops in Normandy, continuing in frontline use even as newer models gradually appeared. Across these fronts, the rifle earned a reputation for reliability and adaptability, with sniper variants using telescopic sights gaining respect for their accuracy and durability. Production reached into the tens of millions, and the design stayed in military and police service in various countries for decades after the war, a sign of how effective and trusted it was. In the end, the Lee Enfield did not prove that bolt-action rifles were the future clearly belonged to semi-automatic and automatic weapons. What it proved was something more uncomfortable for technology worshippers, a so-called imperfect weapon, backed by smart logistics, disciplined training, and solid doctrine. Can outperform more advanced gear that looks better on paper but is used poorly. So now it's your turn. If you had to go into World War II as a British or American soldier, which rifle would you pick? The Lee Enfield with its 10-round magazine and mad-minute training? Or the M1 Garand with its semi-automatic fire? Drop your answer in the comments, and if there's enough debate, the next upload might be a full breakdown, Lee Enfield versus M1 Garand, which rifle really ruled the battlefield?